Hello everyone, been a while since I've done a video. I figured I've got a little bit of time. I'd do a quick sample throw together battle of the Warfare in the Age of Reason rules using my 15mm miniatures that I've painted up so far. So I figured I would just set up a quick sample table, get some troops on the field, push them around, roll some dice, and have you guys come along for the journey. Basically, the general setup here is just a throw together battlefield. Nothing special about it. This is a small town over here, and then got some light woods over there, and they're on the field to kind of give us some decoration, but also kind of maybe give us the bounds, the out of bounds lines of where the battlefield is, even though you'll probably have some maneuvering. But it's a pretty small group. Got some French right in front of me, and then British on the other side. So not a lot of troops to move around, so you don't need a lot of space. So using a smaller space also kind of helps, kind of keep the game moving quickly. So just kind of giving you a shot. I got my dice set up over there, and this is kind of the turn track quick reference chart that I've made a video about previously. I've got 4 French units. This rear guy is a grenadier, and the other 2 are line units, and they are the ace of spades for a brigade. Then there's 2 horse units. There's 6 casting units each, and for the purposes of this tabletop battle, we will assume that they are wearing their cuirasses. In the rules, after a battle set up, any French heavy horse, they roll a d6, and if they get a 1, then they're assumed to be wearing their breastplates. Through the course of the 7 Years' War, especially for the French cavalry, the breastplates were being phased out. So they were supposed to wear them, but a lot of units didn't. Some units did, so the rules handle that by just making it a random die roll. We're assuming for the course of this battle that they did both make the die roll, so they both have their breastplates. And then on the other side we have 2 British heavy horse, and they're both 8 casting units, and that's the other thing, giving the 2 French units their cuirasses. It kind of helps even the dice a little bit, so it's a little bit of a fair fight. Just because the British outnumber the French. So we've got 3 line units, and then the 4th unit back there on the left is their grenadier unit, and then we have a 15 casting Highlander unit, which is the 42nd Regiment of Foot, which became the Black Watch. Did most of their fighting in the 7 Years' War on the North American continent, but they're here today. So the thing that's notable about them is not only are they morale grade 3, but they're 15 casting unit, so they get an extra die for shooting. But they also have the ability to go into a skirmish mode of movement, which is important, especially if you have difficult terrain, especially like a town. Formed units moving through a town become disordered, but skirmish units moving through a town do not. So that might be an option for them. And again, the British cards, the infantry will be the ace of diamonds, and the cavalry will be the 2 of diamonds. And how that works is when we get into the normal movement phase, it's by random card draw. So I figured I'd just have those 4 cards there and kind of makes it all easy. So with that said, I'll get set up. We'll start going through the turn track so you guys can kind of follow along what's going on, and then my thought process for why I make moves and what I'm doing and what I'm thinking, stuff like that. And then hopefully that'll help you guys understand a little bit about the Age of Reason rules and how it's played, and maybe if you have any questions, I might generate some questions. So I'll be back in a couple moments. Okay, so the beginning of the game, the beginning of every turn starts with an arrival check. If you have any units off board, you check to see if they're arrival. We've got everything on board that we're going to use. There's no reinforcements coming in, so we don't need to worry about that. Command checks, we are assuming that for the purposes of this game, everybody's going to be in command, so we're going to end up skipping that step. Rally, as the game progresses, some units might become disordered or rout or such like that, and so they'll need to make rally checks to ensure that they stay on the board or run away. Control checks have to do with the charge phase, which again, we're not worrying about that. Replace leaders. At the moment, we're not going to worry about replacing leaders. And then we would get to the charge and rally back plotting phase, which basically the first step of actual movement before you actually move the units is you decide if you're going to want to charge, and then if you want to charge, you have to declare who you're going to charge, and then you determine any charge movement. It's the first turn. Nobody's really in a good position to charge, so for the purposes here, we are not going to do any charging. And then after that, we move to the normal movement phase. In the normal movement phase, the order of movement is determined by a random card draw, and I gave the 4 cards a shuffle, and we'll just go from left to right, flip the cards over, and then we'll move the units as the cards are revealed. So the first card is the 2 of spades, which is the French Cavalry, and I'll be back after they're done moving. Okay, French Cavalry, really not a lot of things they could do to move except move forward. The woods there on the right kind of pinch their ability to move to the right on the right side of the battlefield, just because they could move to the right of the woods, but that would put them way out of position. So what I had them do is I had them move 12 centimeters forward, which is for heavy cavalry, armored or horse cavalry. That is their full movement. Or excuse me, it should be 24 centimeters. It's 12 inches or 24 centimeters for the movement that I'm using. And in this case, they only moved their half movement, so they only moved 12 centimeters forward. The rear units remained in place where they are, because all they have to do in order to provide support for the front unit is be within a charge movement of the rear, and they're well within their normal charge movement. By giving that gap, it does a couple of things. It allows the rear unit to maneuver if they need to maneuver, but also if the front unit were to be charged and there was to be a breakthrough, it leaves space between the front unit and the rear unit, so that way on the next turn it allows the rear unit the opportunity to countercharge. It also leaves the front units of space. If for some reason they can route around the rear unit instead of routing through the rear unit. So that was the first movement. We'll move to the second one, and that is the French infantry. So I'll go ahead and come back when they're done moved and let you know what happened. All right, the French infantry has moved forward. Essentially, they moved almost their full movement of 16 centimeters, just so that the left unit can use the town as a cover for its left flank. Otherwise, everybody moved forward. The grenadiers in the rear, again, maintaining space from the front unit, but still staying close enough within a normal charge distance that they were able to provide rear support to the units in front of them. And the other thing to note is also having these units on the flank, and this cavalry unit in the rear also gives the infantry some rear support, and this unit would provide flank support, etc. So with that, the British cavalry would be next, and be back after that's done. All right, so the British commander decided to hold their cavalry where they are because they intend to charge on the next turn, and they want to make sure that there's enough space between the unit that they're charging, so that way they can gain enough speed to get up to a full charge. And what that does in the game rules is if they move over 20 centimeters, then they get an extra die bonus to their combat rules. So with that just leaves our British infantry to move, and I'll be back after that's all done. All right, so the British infantry moved forward. The Highlanders kind of oblique to give them a little space, and then moved forward and wheeled a touch so that way they could focus on this infantry unit over here. The rest moved straight forward, although they moved under half movement, and by doing that they're still allowed to fire this turn, whereas the French, they moved pretty much their full movements. Since they moved over half, they cannot shoot at all. but the British regulars, they move less than half, so they can shoot with a -1 penalty. So that is the conclusion of movement, and after that we would have artillery fire, but since we don't have artillery fire, we will skip artillery fire, and then we will move into small arms fire. So essentially the only two units that could fire right now are these two up here, and they will shoot forward at the units directly in front of them. And so to do that, we come over to the small arms fire check and charts and total up the number of dice that we'll roll, and then we will roll the dice to determine casualties. And I'll come back after we get the dice figured out. Okay, after working through the charts, each unit, for having moved, for being fresh and not having fired before, and for being morale grade 2 units, each unit is going to roll 3 dice. And so what we'll do is we'll take the dice, we'll roll them, and then in multiples of 6 is the number of casualties we cause. So again, we're this unit shooting that unit. And so we've got ourselves 12. That's actually not too bad. It's a decent roll. So they've caused 2 casualties to that French unit there. And then this unit, oh wow, so we've got 10, 13. They do 2 casualties as well. So that's actually pretty good for a first shot. And then what we'll do is we'll come over to the casualty marker chart. We'll mark down that they lost 4 casualties. That way we can keep track of how many losses they have before they need to start rolling for more army withdrawal and stuff like that. So as we proceed down the check, so they did the small arms fire, there would be a morale check if they reach certain thresholds, which they do not. Then from there we proceed to melee, which there is no melee. And then after melee is the army withdrawal check, and since we haven't reached any thresholds to cause us to roll for army withdrawal, then we don't have to worry about that as well. So from that we will proceed on to turn 2, and I'll skip ahead to the charge phase because I'm pretty sure that we're going to have some attempts for charges going on. Okay, now we'll get to the charge plotting phase as the next step, and in this game, especially in the 7 Years' War, infantry, it was difficult to get them to charge. So usually you have to have overwhelming numbers, worn down your opponent with shooting, a lot of shooting, volley fire, and then once your opponent's worn down and the morale looks like they're starting to crack, then you run in with the infantry. Conversely, the cavalry, that's kind of their job, is to charge one another and try to get superiority. Cavalry superiority, so they have mobility on the flanks and can put pressure on the infantry. So the British commander, since they're on the attack, their goal is to drive the French from the battlefield. Those 2 British heavy cav units are going to charge the French cavalry unit. But the French cavalry commander, knowing he's in a bit of a pickle, knowing that he can't just receive the charge from the British, he is also going to charge himself. Now, normally with 2 separate players, each player would decide what they would do. They'd either write it on a piece of paper or honor system and just announce it, and then they would announce those units that are going to charge and those that are not going to charge. So the first step, once we declare the charges, is for cavalry we need to roll a morale check to see if they have the desire to even charge in the first place. So I'll work the numbers, I'll get the dice set out, and then I'll come back. Okay, so the dice have been set out. These are the dice to determine, make a morale roll to see if the particular unit wants to charge. And you'll notice right away that the French have a lot of dice, and each cavalry, a British unit, does not have a lot of dice. The French, they get a base 2 dice for the morale grade. Then they get 1 for having both flanks secure. I gave them the flank secure bonus because they're kind of anchored on the woods there, and they know no enemy troops are within those woods, so I'm going to give them the flank bonus. And then they've also got rear support, and then plus French units have a desire to want to, they're charge happy, and so they get an extra bonus when they're trying to charge or counter charge. Conversely, the British, the guy on the right there, he doesn't have any flank support, nor does he have any rear support, so all he gets is his base 2 morale dice. And the other guy, he doesn't get rear support, but he does have a unit on either of his flanks within 10 centimeters, so he does get the flank support bonus. So we'll start with the French unit, and basically we're going to roll the dice, and we're going to, if the cumulative total is 6 or greater, the unit will charge. And with the French rolling 5 dice, there's a extremely high possibility that they're going to charge. I'd be extremely surprised if they didn't. Yeah, so they rolled a lot. They got well over 6, so they're definitely going to go. We'll roll this unit next. And again, oh yeah, you got a natural 6 anyway, so they're going to go in. And then finally, this unit here, see if he's going to charge. 2 and a 3, so he rolled. He did not get a 6, so he is not going to charge. So he's going to stay where he is. Now he's not going to do any charge movement, but he is allowed to move during the normal movement phase, but he's only allowed to move at half movement rate. So what we'll do is with that now, because these two units are charging one another, since they're the same class of cavalry, they just basically move together, and so I'll make their movements and then come back when that's done. Okay, so the charge movement has been completed, and you'll notice that there's a couple of white puffballs sitting out there. The two kind of white puffballs sitting out in the open mark the starting positions of each cavalry unit, and that's important for after melee. If one unit wins and drives the other off and is able to pursue, they're only able to use up their remaining charge movement to do a pursuit move. And so it's important to mark where they start movement, so that way you know how much movement they have available remaining. And then the third puffball in that unit, that's just there to mark that says that he's got basically a restriction on his movement, so that way during the normal movement phases, a reminder that he can only move half movement. So the charge movement phase is done, and then next will be the normal movement phase, and we'll take it from there. Okay, the first card, after shuffling and turning them over, I pulled the 2 of diamonds, and that's the British Cavalry. So the one cavalry unit that's in melee, he's locked, he can't move. And the second cavalry unit, he's actually in a really good position to provide support. He can either be counted to as flank support with the that unit there, or he could also be used as rear support on the cavalry unit. So the position that he's in right now is advantageous where he's at, so he's just going to remain there. The next unit that'll move is the Ace of Spades, which is the French infantry, and so I will be back after completing their movement. Okay, so the French infantry has completed their move, and basically they moved forward slightly, and the reason why they did that was this unit on the left didn't really have a good shot on that unit kind of moving up on their flank, so they wheeled a little bit so that way they can get more stands on target, for lack of a better term. But in doing so, that obviously kind of exposed their flank, so I had to move up the remaining 2 units to cover that flank, so that way there weren't any gaps remaining, and then the grenadiers just followed up behind, so that way they could maintain their support distance. Also, it's also important to note that the position where they're at, they provide excellent flank support for their cavalry unit in melee there. So with that, the next unit to move will be the French cavalry, and again, the one's locked in melee, so he's not going to move anyways. But I think the only thing I'm going to do is move that second unit up just slightly, just to make sure that they maintain that rear support distance. And that's in fact what they ended up doing. And then with the final card being the British infantry, they have no reason to move. They're in perfect firing position as they are. With that, we will move on to the firing phase, which it's pretty obvious who's going to shoot at what. But for clarification, if for some reason it would be the artillery phase normally, but again we don't have any artillery, so we're skipping that. Units that are locked in melee are not targets for shooting, whether artillery or small arms fire. There is an opportunity to shoot at prospective meleeing units while they're in the process of charging, but once they're locked into melee, you can't shoot at them. So I will go ahead and figure out the dice numbers for each unit, and then I'll come back when that's all sorted out. The dice have been determined. These units, they're base morale grade 2, so they start with a morale grade 2 dice, and then because they have not shot during this game yet, they would normally get an additional +1 die, but because they moved, and they moved under half so they could still shoot, it's a -1 die to their shooting, so each unit only gets 2 dice. Conversely, the British regular line, the morale grade 2, they've already done their first fire, but they're still fresh units. They haven't taken more than 25% casualties, so they get an extra die for being fresh. That's kind of to reflect the British fire superiority that they historically had. And then the Highlanders, they're morale grade 3 unit. So they start with 3 dice. They have not shot yet, so they get their first fire die. They have more than 12 castings, so they get an extra die for that, plus they're a fresh regular unit. So they're definitely going to put out a wallop once they roll their dice. So, and again, firing simultaneous, so it doesn't really matter what order we go in, but since these smaller groupings of dice, we'll do these first. So the French, that guy only rolled 4, so he didn't do any, he wasn't effective in his firing. That guy rolled a 7, so he did cause 1 casualty to the British unit. And then this guy, again, for small arms fire, it's multiples of 6. Did 10 there, so again, multiple of 6, only doing 1 casualty to the British unit. And then we'll come back with this guy. He did 9, so he himself only caused 1 against the French. This guy here, looks like we've got 10. Again, that rounds to only 1 casualty on the French. And then this guy, this is going to be the big one. Let's see how well he doesn't do. That's a lot of numbers there. So there is 1, 2, 3 casualties. That's 18 in total, because the extra pip would come to the 6. That would make a 6. So 6, 6, and 6. So that's 3 casualties. So yeah, that was painful for the French, and so. Now, because each unit has 3 casualties on them, that means they remove a stand. So then we can remove these pips off because we don't need to keep track of the pips now. I'll go ahead and do that once it's all done, and the next phase is going to be the morale phase. Because those 3 infantry units have each lost 25% in casualties, they now need to make morale checks. And to do that, you total up dice based on situation, and then you roll the dice, depending on what the total is, according to the chart. They will might rout or just stay disorganized or whatever the case might be. So generally speaking, they all got the same modifiers. So they got the base 2 for the base morale grade. They got 1 for being within 10 centimeters of a friendly unit on their flank on both sides. So they got supportive flanks. Then they get an additional +1 for having rear support. but because they've lost 25%, they lose -1. So in total, each one only rolls 3 dice. So with that, you can tell the important factor in setting up your armies when playing this game is setting up so that way you maintain your flank support bonus and you maintain your rear support bonus. So that way you get more dice. So with this guy, we'll check his morale. He got over 6, kind of like the cavalry, so he is safe. Again, he's safe. And usually where you start seeing problems is if you're only rolling 1 or 2 dice. That's when you start running into, you become disorganized, or you start to become broken, stuff like that. So getting your opponent into situations where they don't have morale dice is kind of the goal. Also, for your own safety, being in situations where you have morale dice to help save your army. That's the goal. So after the small arms fire and the morale tests, we move on to melee, and I'll sort those dice out, and then I'll come back when that's done. So here we are. They each are going to get 3 dice. Primarily, it's because they're both morale grade 2 units, so they start with morale grade 2. And then for every 6 castings, they get an additional die. So the French, since they've only got 6 castings, they get 1 die. The British, they've got 8 castings, so they get 2 die. Basically, it's for every 6 rounded up, you get a die. And then for all the... previously, I said if they moved over 20 centimeters, they would get an additional die for charging, for getting up to speed. They only moved 13 centimeters for the both of them. They're only 26 centimeters apart when they started. And so neither one of them moved over 20 centimeters, so they don't get that extra die bonus, which is something to consider when if you have cavalry that you decide not to charge, but your opponent charges you. It's worth trying to countercharge, depending on what the situation is, to close that gap so that way they don't move the distance before contact, if that makes sense. So that's something to consider for future as well. So with that, what we do then is we determine the number of dice that we're rolling, and then we roll all the dice together, and then multiples of 6 cause casualties, and whoever causes more casualties wins. So, well, here we go. So the French did 8, 9, 10, 11 damage, rolled an 11. The British rolled a 7. That only rounds to 1 casualty apiece. So because it's a locked combat, they did the same amount of damage to each other. The combat is locked and it goes into melee into the next round. And so with that, the melee for this turn is over. And then we move into the next phase, which is army withdrawal phase. And the French, due to the number of castings they have in the battlefield, they need to lose 15 casualties before we need to start worrying about rolling for withdrawal. And they're only at 9, they're actually at 10 so far. So that's not quite to that point yet. So no need to withdraw. So we'll come back around. I think for the most part, the only thing that we've got to do is I think the next phase would be the charge phase for the next turn. There's really not going to be any movement going on. Everybody's pretty static until things start to break. Though the charge phase, we might have the French cavalry unit will probably charge forward to join into the melee, whereas the cavalry in the rear there, he really can't. He doesn't have the ability to charge in, really. There's nowhere for him to get into contact with it. So take a break from here, and I'll join you back in when after the charge phase. All right, here we go through turn 3, again the charge phase, and that's what we did have happen. The French charged up to give support into the melee. So ultimately what that's going to mean is the French ultimately are going to have an extra die. So it'll be the French 4 dice to the British 2 dice. And then the next phase we're going to move to is small arms fire, because everybody's kind of, again, in position until something cracks, and then see where we go from there. Okay, targets are shooting at the same targets again. Again, the French didn't move this turn, so they don't have a penalty for movement, but neither do they have their first fire, so they're still at 2 dice. The British are the same as before, except for the Highlanders, which they don't get their first fire, so they're only at 5 dice. So, let's see how the French do. Oh, he gives 1 casualty on the Highlanders. That's a start. They do nothing in a puff of smoke, and that guy causes 1 casualty against the British there. So now it's time for the British to return fire. It's just going to be 1 casualty against the French for him. That guy also is only going to do 1 casualty, because again it's multiples of 6. And this guy is going to do lots of casualties. So there's 1, 2, only 2 casualties, all those dice. It's still better than 0. So with that, because even though they've taken additional casualties, they have not gone over a 50% casualty threshold, so there's no need to roll for small arms melee. So then from here, we will figure out the number of dice for excuse me, I think it said there's no need for morale, but now we'll figure out the dice for melee. And as I said before, all the dice should be the same, except for the French will get an extra die due to the extra unit coming up to support. Okay, so we're going to roll for melee now. Again, multiples of 6, and because we have this extra die unit, the French cavalry does have a slight edge. So let's see what we got here. The British cause 1 casualty, that being a 10, which rounds to a multiple of, and the French also only cause 1 casualty. So basically what we have going on here is the British and the French, so since the new unit casualty is going to get added onto him, and then that becomes 2, which becomes a loss of a stand. So, yeah, that kind of makes things interesting there a little bit. So, again, that's the end of the 3rd turn, and then we'll come around to turn 4. Again, not a lot of need to do movement or charge movement, although I might look up some stuff, might be able to have that unit in the rear charge up to support. They can fill in and add some extra support, kind of help even the numbers a little bit, but it's kind of wonky with how it is, so I don't know with the way things are positioned if they'll be able to do that or not. So that might be the only change of movement. Otherwise, I'll take some time to look at that. Otherwise, I'll come back and we will probably move straight into small arms fire. So as I said before, moving straight into the small arms fire, I kind of thought about how I can get that cavalry unit to assist with the melee, and there's really not a good way to do it. I was thinking about maybe even moving him around the woods to come around the flank, but I think at the same time they've got to worry about what if that British cavalry unit loses, so they need to kind of stay there to fill the gap. Although they do have infantry that can kind of help support. So hindsight, maybe that's something to think about for next turn. But that said, moving into small arms fire. That French unit only does 3 pips, so that doesn't cause any damage. We do get a 6 right there, so they do cause 1 casualty to the British. And this guy here only does 5, so no damage there. And then in response, and I dropped the die. They do 1 casualty in return for getting 6 on the nose. These guys do, ooh, almost had 2, but they're just 1. And then the Highlanders, 3. They get their 3 damage. That's pretty hefty. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and right away, just to kind of make things easy, take that 1 standoff right off. So with that, this unit will have to roll morale. Excuse me. So I will calculate the morale dice and then I'll get back to you. All right, so now that that infantry unit is down to 50%, they have to roll for morale again, and then if for any other casualty they take, they have to roll morale for every turn. So they get the base 2 morale for the morale grades. They get a die for flank secure and then a die for rear support. But because they've lost 50%, they get a -2 dice. So they're only rolling 2 dice. But they roll a 10, and that's enough for them to stay. That gives us some options to deal with. So with that, now we are back to the ongoing melee of the cavalry. The French haven't had any significant changes, so they'll be still at their 4 dice. The British, on the other hand, because they've lost that extra stand, they get 2 for the morale, but they only get 1 die for the numbers of castings. So they are going to be down to 3. Something tells me I rolled it wrong last time, but anyways. So yeah, 2 for the morale, and then 1 for the castings. That should be that. So, and I dropped the die again. Ooh. So the British do 2 casting casualties because they've got 13 there. Conversely, the French only did 1 casting casualty to the British. So that is certainly telling. So they got 1 for the British, and then due to they've already got 1 on each stand, so the 2 casualties are going to go get pulled off the stands. And then from there, we need to determine the results of the battle. So, the difference between the numbers of casualties is 1. So the British will roll 1d6 and then add 1 for the difference. Now the thing is there's 2 units there, so they basically need to roll twice. Once for each unit to see what happens. So the rear unit will go first. 5, and then +1 becomes a 6. And that is going to mean that the unit falls back a full charge move broken. Okay, so we need to look at our chart to see what the full charge move is for a heavy cavalry unit, and that is 20 centimeters. So I will get this guy here. 20 centimeters, I'll put it here. And they will be facing the opposite direction. Yeah. Get that situated here. here and here. These two pips go away. And then I'll get a broken marker here in a second. And then the other guy is the same as well. Rolled as 5 plus 1 is a 6. Full charge move broken, which essentially just puts them here. Yeah, that's exciting. So now what we got to do is we're not worrying about leaders, but we also need to determine whether or not there's a possibility that that cavalry unit captured the enemy's colors during the fray. So we need to roll a d6, and for the rear unit, they got a 2. Since the difference is 1, they need to actually roll a 1. And then the second guy is a 4, so they're safe as far as that goes. Now, because it was an ongoing melee, that cavalry unit, he just stays there. He becomes disorganized and fatigued because, result of combat and all that. And then these guys will become broken and fatigued. So that definitely leads to some interesting prospects for the next turn. But before that, I got to count some numbers. The French are going to have to roll for army withdrawal. So we will I'll come back with that after I'm done. Okay, so calculating the army withdrawal dice. I credited the British or the French as for the purposes of this game, even though technically according to the rules you have to move through a terrain space or whatever to basically count as occupying it, or have an opponent move through it to count as losing the terrain. But I'm gonna credit the British with driving the French out of away from those woods, so the French will lose that factor. So they've got 22 casualties, which means that they're above 30% casualties, so they get 1 die for that, and then for losing the terrain, they get another die. So if they roll a 12 or higher, so in this case, because they're only rolling 2 dice, they need to get box cards. If they roll a 12 or higher, then the game is over, the British win. And they don't, so we'll go into another turn. And looking around, I think most of the movement kind of take a look into what the possibility of that cavalry maybe doing a counter charge or a charge into those rear, because that would be a pretty hefty hit. Also maybe thinking about doing some movement here, thinking about pulling out that unit and then moving the grenadiers up to help support. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Okay, talk to you in a bit. Moving on to the next turn, we are looking at the next phase. If we skipped ahead, would be the rally phase, and because these units got their status markers the last turn, they have to sit for a turn before they can remove the status markers. Now the purple markers is a fatigue marker because they charge and all that stuff and got out of battle, so they've got the fatigue marker put on them. Basically that limits them, they're only able to do half movement. The disorder marker, the broken marker, which is orange, they are restricted to they can't move anything, they can just sit there. They're not routed, but they just have to sit there for a turn. The disorder marker, they're allowed to move, maneuver, fight, all that stuff, except the disorder marker gives them a -1 penalty. Unfortunately, because of the fatigue status and the distance that they are, being able to only move half distance, this would be the perfect time to charge, because that unit would get them in the rear. But because of the fatigue marker, they're only able to move half movement, so that's unfortunately outside of their charge distance. So, and the unit in the rear isn't able to charge because they don't have. I mean, you could kind of say they probably have some line of sight there, but because of moving through the other unit would cause disorder. Plus, they're outside of the charge range anyway, so it's really not worth it to have them charge this turn. So, basically, The French cav can't do anything, so they have to sit there anyways. The British unit, they're going to take their time. They're going to recover as well, so that way they'll be nice and fresh to go for next turn. And but the infantry, I think it's worth doing the movement cards to see what things are in order, because what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to I'm going to try to swap the Grenadier unit with that line unit there to see if I can kind of shore up that flank, although that does leave me exposed on the right there. So we'll see what we'll flip over this card, see what we've got. The British infantry is not going to move. They're in a pretty solid spot. And then the French cavalry, well, the French cavalry is fixed. There's really not anything they can do. The next would be the British cavalry, and again, I kind of discussed what they're going to do, so they're not going to do anything, which leaves the French infantry. So let me take a moment, think about it, and then I'll come back after that's all done. All right, I think it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, but the smart thing, even though we're kind of, the French army's kind of getting to the point where they're getting close to the breaking point and definitely overwhelmed. Trying to get that unit out of there is the smart thing to do, but that definitely leaves a big gap and a hole here with the cavalry kind of threatening that flank over there. So I think in that regards, the smart play would be to not move in this case. Just kind of take the lumps over here with that infantry, getting weakened and stuff like that. I mean, the end is kind of in sight. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen. So with that, I guess we'll move on to shooting. All right, so as previous turns were the shooting dice, the only significant change is this French unit here, because now they're down to 6 or less castings. They only they'd get a -1 to their die roll. So since they started with 2 anyways, it comes down to a 1. So let's see if they do anything with this guy. They rolled a 1, didn't do anything. These guys, they did get a 6, so they did cause a casualty. That is going to be a stand removed for those guys at the end of the turn, or at the end of the phase. And then here, that's a weird pip dice there. I never noticed that before. But anyway, so they got 1 as well. Again, that's another stand removed. And the big significant thing with that is on successive turns, the British will lose their fresh fire bonus, which means that they will be only shooting with 2 dice instead of 3 dice. So coming back with the British do 1 in response here. Ooh, that guy does not. And then the Highlanders do a lot. Well, they missed 3 again just by 1, so they did 2 casualties there. So with that, I'll go ahead and apply the casualties, and then we'll get ready for morale rolls, because we'll definitely need some morale rolls. Okay, so the morale dice is assigned, and this is really going to be interesting, especially on the French side. And this is again where you're talking about keeping your flanks secure and keeping your rear secure. So this guy has secure flanks and secure rear, but he's a -3 dice because of how many casualties he's taken. So he's only down to 1. This guy is holding firm where he's at. He's got the plus for the flanks and for the rear, but a -1 for his -25%. This guy, he has a rear support and his base morale, which gets him to 3, but he's a -2 for the 25%, so it brings him down to 1. And he doesn't have a threatened flank because the guy isn't facing his flank, but he no longer has a secure flank because he no longer has an ally within 10 centimeters there. And then these 2 British units up top, they get their 2 for the base, for flank, and for rear, but also -1 for losing 25%. So we'll do the 3 dice first, with the assumption that they're probably going to be okay, and then we'll worry about the others later. So yeah, that French guy's good. This British guy, Yeah, British guy's good. He's got a lot. And then this British guy, oh yeah, he's good too. So those three units are standing firm. But now we got the single die, and this is where interesting things can happen. So this guy here, he rolls a 5, and a 5 is a halt disorganized, I believe, if I recall. Yep, halt disorganized. So he just stays there. He can't move, and he becomes disorganized. And then this guy here, he rolled a 5 as well, so he's a halt disorganized. So, they can't move. There's no ability for them to maneuver. They can shoot still, but they can't do anything for the rest of the turn. So they'll be able to shoot next turn because we're going into the next turn, but they won't be able to do any moving. Well, they'll move. They'll just, be halt disorganized is applicable to this turn. Next turn, they'll be able to move. They'll be stuck with their disorganized markers. So with that, then it brings us to there's no artillery, there's no melees this turn. So that brings us to the arm withdrawal phase, and again, the French being in the situation that they are, that's definitely the case. So add up the numbers, see what they come up with, and get back to you. The French units did not rout. They actually they just kind of they're holding their ground, so to speak. They don't count as penalties towards the arm withdrawal. So if any unit's routing, then that counts against you. But they're not. But they do have enough casualties to get them over 40% losses. So that gives them automatically 2 dice plus the 1 die for the losing the woods. So we'll roll these and see what it comes up with. And that is a game over. The French have lost. That rolls a 12, which means the game is over, and the British would take command of the field. The French would retreat, and if there's a campaign game, you determine how many casualty, how many units are remaining for the campaign board and stuff like that, and retreat fire and such like that. So, well, that's essentially a game of the warfare of the Age of Reason. The French were definitely outgunned and outnumbered, so that as far as a playable fight, if the French had some artillery, that would definitely kind of change things up a little bit, because that would help them out in their cavalry, or in causing casualties and stuff like that. But the British are brutal with their extra fire that they get with their shooting training that they have to allow them to fire successfully, very well. That's a pretty big deal. Now, in the campaign game, when you're looking at the British Army list, the British units themselves that get that extra fire bonus only make up a fraction of the Allied army, because they also have Hanoverians and Brunswickers and such like that. So, in a 1-to-1 fight, for when you're thinking of bigger battles, it's not going to be all British troops versus all French troops. The Allied army is going to be, the British troops maybe make up, 20% of the infantry. So that fire bonus that the British get is mitigated somewhat. So, although the Prussians do get it, and so the Prussians, would be pretty deadly. So I think in that regard, you definitely need some superior numbers in order to stand toe to toe, I think, in that context. So let me know what you guys all think. It's a fun game to play, and as I get more units painted up, I'll do a couple other practice battles. I've also kind of been thinking about maybe doing some videos regarding like a School of the Soldier type of videos, for lack of a better term. How to, different formations and movement modes, and tactics and strategies and thoughts, and maybe thinking process and stuff like that. So Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys would be interested to see, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.